Human imagination has no limits. With every new horror film, the creativity of the filmmakers keeps surprising us. Sometimes they take old ideas and use them as a foundation to create a monster. Over time, many of those creatures are forgotten. Others are so unremarkable that they barely catch our attention. But Jeepers Creepers is a different story. The history of this creature still hasn't been fully revealed. It's been more than 20 years since the first film was released, and we still don't have a clear answer to who Jeepers Creepers really is. In 2018, the first comic about the monster was released, and it's there that we were finally given some important information. Clues that help us understand that the creeper is not a demon, but a very real living organism. The problem is, this organism isn't from our planet. That's why its anatomy and its life cycle are completely different from any form of life we know on Earth. My name is Evgeny, and today I'm going to tell you the story of Jeepers Creepers. It's time to uncover the monster's true form. Let's begin. So, for convenience, the video will be divided into several parts. The first and main part is the history of the creeper. Since the films barely show the monster's past, my main sources of information will be the comics and early screenplay drafts. Most viewers believe that the creeper is a demon, but that's not actually the case. In the first issue of the comic, the creators show a scene where the Aztecs cut out a human heart during a ritual sacrifice. In that ritual, the creeper was worshipped as the deity Quetzalcoatl. Because of this, it's often believed that the first people who began worshipping the creeper were the Aztecs. They treated the monster like a god and worshipped him for centuries. They fed him human hearts and sacrificed their most beautiful women and their strongest warriors. But in reality, the earliest mentions of the creeper go back much further. In 4000 BC, the ancient Sumerians mentioned the monster as a visitor from another world and called him Ningish Zida. Just like the Aztecs, they feared the creeper and preferred to offer themselves as sacrifices. What's most interesting is that the Sumerians believed the creeper was a guest who fell from the sky to Earth. He was not born on our planet. The creature existed long before the first humans appeared. Both belief systems claimed that the creeper did not arrive on Earth alone. He had a twin brother named Dumuzi, whom the Aztecs called Xolotl. He looked exactly like the creeper and also had a taste for human flesh. The first people who began a war against these unwelcome visitors were the Egyptians. They refused to recognize gods who killed humans and brought nothing good into the world. So they began preparing their own plan for revenge. The Egyptians understood that these creatures were immortal. They had no knowledge of how to kill them, but they did know the main weakness of this species, their strange life cycle. The creeper had to sleep for long periods of time. His sleep lasted 23 years, while his active phase lasted only 23 days. So the Egyptians built a massive stone structure, a prison from which the monster would never be able to escape. The structure we know today as the Great Pyramid of Khufu is believed to be connected to this story. When the creeper's brother, Xolotl, was in his long sleep, his body was taken into the pyramid. The Egyptians removed all of his internal organs and placed them separately in vessels. Later, the body was completely dried and placed inside a sarcophagus. In other words, they carried out a standard process of mummification. Even if the monster were to awaken, he wouldn't be able to escape on his own. To regenerate his body and restore his heart, lungs, and brain, he would need donors, human beings. But buried beneath massive stone blocks and sealed deep inside the pyramid, he was doomed to remain trapped in the tomb forever. The structure was sealed so that no one could reach the creature from the outside. As for the creeper himself, when he learned that his brother had been imprisoned inside the pyramid, he decided it was no longer safe for him to remain in that region, so he left and traveled to North America. Centuries later, the Aztecs would find him there and begin worshipping him as a god. From this important part of the story, we learn that the creeper was not born on Earth. He was most likely an alien, a being that arrived on this planet long before humans began to dominate it. The Sumerians believed that he and his brother Dumuzi came from Venus, but whether that's actually true is unknown. Personally, I think that Dumuzi was not really a brother at all, but simply another representative of the same extraterrestrial species. We also can't say for certain that there were only two of them on Earth. Different cultures around the world contain references to similar creatures. Ancient Chinese traditions described him as a dragon. In Jewish mythology, he was given the name Nama. The Maya called the monster Kamazots. The Cherokee knew him as Uktana, Abaddon, the devil, Lucifer, Dobdana. So many different names. And it's unlikely that all of them refer to just one monster. References to the same kind of creature appear at the same time in completely different parts of the world, on different continents. How many creepers existed at the very beginning of history is unknown, but we do know that over time people stopped worshipping this visitor from another world. Instead, an order of warriors was formed, made up of people from different nations, whose goal was to hunt the creeper and other members of his kind across the world. In a deleted scene from the second film, we are shown at least 4 different cultures fighting the ancient monster, from medieval knights to Native American warriors. It's unknown who exactly founded this order or how much they were able to accomplish, but judging by what we know today, only one of these creatures survived into modern times, and his name is Jeepers Creepers. But how was he able to live for tens of thousands of years, and why is he considered immortal? Here we need to take a closer look at the creature's strange anatomy, and most importantly, its ability to regenerate its body and replace all of its internal organs. In fact, we don't know what the creeper originally looked like. Much like the creature from John Carpenter's film The Thing, it assimilates body parts, if we can use that term to better understand the process. But if we look at the stories of ancient civilizations, the earliest descriptions portray it as a serpent with wings and a spreading hood. The humanoid appearance came later, after it began absorbing human body parts. The creature is capable of replacing all of its organs, and it is this ability that gives it what appears to be immortality. But there is always a price. The creeper spends most of its existence in survival mode. It enters a state of hibernation for 23 years and then wakes up in the spring for 23 days in order to replace organs that have deteriorated over time. That's why it is forced to search for donors, human beings. But not every person is suitable for replacement. On its nose, there is an additional nostril, a highly sensitive organ that helps it choose the right victim. Through the scent coming from a human body, it can analyze a person's physical condition and health, so it isn't fear that attracts the creeper, as many people believe. What it's really looking for are the organs it needs to survive. There is a theory that the creeper can only absorb organs from people with a specific blood type, and only from males, since the creeper itself is male. Once it chooses a donor, the creeper consumes the specific body part it needs for replacement. It can replace any part of its body, even its own head. And it doesn't do this only when the head is severely damaged and can no longer function. Sometimes it replaces its head in order to obtain new information. Because its active phase lasts only 23 days, it has to learn and adapt to a constantly changing world very quickly. In just 23 days, it's almost impossible to understand how society has changed. That's why the main purpose of replacing the head is to gain access to a person's memories and knowledge. That's how the creeper learns everything. It knows how to drive a car, it wears clothing as a disguise, it understands human speech, and it can speak as well.
She don't smell too good. There he is.
The creeper also listens to music, and is even open to creativity. Much like the creature in The Thing, the creeper adapts quickly to a new planet. And since humans became the dominant species, the creeper chose them as donors. They eventually became the main source used to shape the external appearance of its body. We remember that in the beginning, when it first arrived on Earth, it looked like a winged serpent. But after thousands of years, it began to look like a human, almost like a human. This is a perfect survival strategy, a way to adapt quickly to new conditions. But in order for its body to accept the new organs as its own, the creeper has to enter a state of hibernation. That's why it sleeps for 23 years. During that time, it goes through a full transformation cycle, allowing its body to absorb and integrate the new parts. We know that the creeper changed its head twice during the events of the second film because of injuries. And the first recorded time this happened was in 1953. This is easy to figure out by looking at its taste in music. The creeper listens to its favorite song, Jeepers Creepers, a jazz tune released in 1938. and the truck it drives was produced by Chevrolet in 1941. With some simple math, subtracting 23 years from each of his awakenings, it's easy to calculate when exactly the creeper replaced his head. That moment points directly to the year 1953. You might be wondering what his head looked like before his first transformation into a human one. The answer is hidden in the creeper's own creations, more specifically in the carvings on his weapons. The handles of his blades are made from human bones and are always decorated with intricate carvings. And it's there that he depicts his original appearance. What's interesting is that this same image appears on all of his blades and even on his spear. This is what the creeper looked like when he first arrived on Earth, a serpent-like head with multiple rows of teeth. You can also notice that his expanding hood, as well as his wings, were originally natural parts of his body. I believe that the hood is what connects his brain to the rest of his body. That's why he was able to tear off his own head without losing control over his body. But of course, this is only a theory. The creature's anatomy is extremely strange. It's difficult to compare it to any organism that lives on our planet. His wings allow him to fly very quickly. The claws on his legs are designed to grab and hold his prey, much like birds of prey do. His teeth are sharp and not meant for chewing food. They exist only to latch onto flesh and tear it apart. The creeper also shows emotions. He can feel anger and sometimes even something close to joy. And then there's his twisted sense of creativity, stitching together corpses, which terrifies anyone who sees it. He creates his own weapons, often using human bones as materials. In the first two films, Jeepers Creepers was portrayed as a brutal creature with a deep and mysterious past, but the third film went in a completely different direction. There, the character was shown in a much more mystical way. He was suddenly able to control his truck with the power of his mind, which honestly looked quite ridiculous. And not just the truck, he could also control his weapons, moving his spear and axe as if they were guided by telekinesis. By the way, his axe is the only weapon that Jeepers Creepers did not create himself. It's most likely a souvenir from past battles. For some reason, it seems to be important to him, and he always carries it on his back. In the third film, we were shown a flying hand and many other unnecessary elements, which ended up confusing a lot of viewers, myself included, because along with the pointless telekinesis, we were also shown a strange skeleton inside the truck. And it clearly didn't belong to a human. It might actually be the skull of another member of the same species. There's a theory that there were originally 3 of them in the second film during Minxie's vision, where we briefly see parts of the creeper's history. The final image shows 3 scarecrows. In the center stands the creeper himself, and on both sides are the bodies of his dead brethren. One of them was killed by the Egyptians at the very beginning of their history. The second was most likely destroyed by the Holy Order, and by our time, only one remains. So the skull inside the truck could belong to one of those 3 creatures. In the third film, as I mentioned earlier, we were shown even more strange details, and even though the movie never fully explains why people begin having dreams and visions about the creeper, the early screenplay drafts for the second film included an important rule. You're not supposed to touch him. Contact can create some kind of connection. This idea was demonstrated very poorly in the third film through the scene with the severed hand. Personally, I don't really take the continuation seriously. For me, only the first 2 films truly exist. But after the contact with the hand, a new theory appeared about how the creeper could actually be killed. At first, many people believed that he could be killed with the axe that the creeper always carries with him. But after the third film, most theories started pointing to a completely different idea. Weapons don't matter. Sacred relics don't matter either. The only way to destroy the creeper might be to consume him while he's sleeping. Maybe that's really the answer, but most likely we won't find out the truth anytime soon. The first film, Jeepers Creepers, was released in 2001. The movie had a budget of $10 million, while the box office reached about $60 million. And we still don't know how much the film earned later from DVD sales. But one thing is certain, it was a success. Audiences liked Jeepers Creepers. Critics, however, often called it the Frankenstein of cinema, because the film combines ideas from several other stories. In 1988, the movie Scarecrows was released. In that film, 3 terrifying scarecrows on a cornfield sew parts of human bodies onto themselves in order to survive, which strongly reminds us of the Creeper. He also has a strange life cycle, similar to Pennywise from Stephen King's novel, It. The difference is that Pennywise awakens every 27 years. The Creeper hunts, collects trophies like a predator, and much like the creature in The Thing, copies human organs in order to survive. So yes, in many ways Jeepers Creepers really is a Frankenstein of the horror genre. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments.